This is my final video log for my independent study. In this video, I'm going to go over the format for my final document. The final document is delivering some documentation on the collision system that I've been building in the last 10 weeks. I've decided to write this documentation in the format of code documentation using the RustDoc tool that's distributed with the Rust programming language. The idea here is that since I'm already writing this documentation on how the collision system works for the class, I figured I'd do it in a way that would also allow any potential future users to easily be able to find this documentation, since it doesn't exist in a separate PDF or a separate document that was written off to the side. It's actually part of the regular documentation for the Game Engines API. So what you see here is the home page for the documentation, and the stuff that's important for the final document is if you go down here below, it says modules, and under the component module down here you'll see that there's another submodule called Collider, and it's the only one. It's easy to see because it's the only one that has a little note by it. The Collider module contains the documentation for the collision subsystem. I've written it up in moderate detail, including some brief examples. The Collider module documentation contains kind of the high-level explanation, including the user-facing API that you'd be actually using to make a game. And it also includes information on the structure of the collision system, as well as access to the backend documentation on the backend system, which includes the grid collision system. Down here under modules, again, there'll be grid collision, and if you click on that, this has some documentation explaining the implementation details for the grid collision system. This discusses both the grid collision algorithm at a high level, as well as some of the details of how I was able to parallelize it to, and what advantages that parallelism provided to the grid collision algorithm. Other pieces of documentation worth taking a look at is back under the Collider module. The collider type is how you actually define an entity in the game as having a collidable volume. So the documentation here explains how to a degree, explains what that looks like to the user. So that's also worth taking a look at. But the documentation is primarily within the Collider module and the grid collision module. I'm going to be delivering this final documentation as a zipped file. So let me show you what that's going to look like and how you're going to open this up, because it's a little bit not easy to get to, because RustDoc doesn't provide a default homepage. So when you unzip the documentation, you're going to get a folder that looks like this. That's going to have just a bunch of subfolders and a bunch of HTML files. The folder you want is Gunship, and inside Gunship there'll be an index.html. Just double click that, and that'll bring you to the home page, and this has access to documentation for the entire Gunship game engine. What you're only interested is the collision subsystem, which is accessed under component and then under Collider. So that should be fairly easy to get to. You can just refer to this video to be able to find that. And that's it. That's everything I have for this last 10 weeks of work. I haven't touched code in the last couple of weeks because I've been busy with other classes, and there hasn't been much to do. There's some minor robustness work remaining, but I'm probably going to be leaving that for the future because that's not as important. And I think the next thing I really want to do with Gunship is start working on gameplay. I've spent a lot of time building up the subsystems and working on performance, and now I want to start making some use of it. But that's it. I've really enjoyed this quarter, and I will see you later.